Greetings, this is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. On this night, we continue Dion Fortune's The Circuit of Force, and we start with this chapter, Spiritual and Elemental Energies. Some of my favorite topics right there. Indeed. Because most of what we work concerning magic is done through the agency of elemental forces, either elemental forces or spiritual forces. We could say cosmic, right? Elemental forces pertaining to the earth and cosmic forces pertaining to things not of this earth. So, glad to be here. Happy to see you. Let's dive into some of this wisdom and knowledge. Chicano 42, peace and greetings, my friend. Welcome. Good to see you. Sunshine Chick, always good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Peace to you. Zero the Hero, peace and blessings. Good grace to you, my friend. Good grace. Happy to see you all here. Peace, Christina Palacios. Thus, for the etheric mentor. Absolutely. Hope you're having a great evening. So let's talk about these elemental energies, these spiritual and elemental energies. And before I get started, as a matter of fact, let me see here. This app that I use is always adding something new. I probably should have figured out how to do this before I started. Where is it? Widgets. There it is. Widgets. There we go. I'm going to make a poll. Let me know if it shows up. Also, let me know if the audio is coming through clear or if I need to turn up the mic or anything. Yeah, so let me know if you can see that poll. It says, have you felt the pull to begin Vedic mantras lately? Type 1 or 2 in the chat. 1 for yes, 2 for nah. Thoroughly, peace and greetings. All right, let's go. The Circuit of Force, Part 2, May 1939, Dion Fortune. We must conceive of the personality as receiving energy from two sources. The spiritual energy drawn into it through the realizations of the mind, and the elemental energy flowing into it through the etheric double. It will be observed that I do not refer to the body as a source, whence energy may be taken up by the personality. And upon this omission hangs the whole theory of yoga as the culture of the etheric double. So check this out again now. When we say personality, we're talking about the lower self, right? When she refers to the individuality and the personality, the individuality, we're talking about that higher self, the soul, the aspect of your consciousness that is larger and more vast than this current incarnation. That's the individuality. The personality is you can call it the lower self, you can call it the incarnation in this particular life. So we must conceive of the personality, the lower self, as receiving energy from two sources. The spiritual energy drawn into it through the realizations of the mind, right? And you have that through study. And it says, and the elemental energy flowing into it through the etheric double. It will be observed that I do not refer to the body as a source, whence energy may be taken up by the personality. And upon this omission hangs the whole theory of yoga as the culture of the etheric double. A lot of what yoga focuses on is work done with the etheric body. With the etheric body. Rose of Flame, peace and greetings. Welcome, welcome. Hope you're well. The physical body is of the earth, earthy. Its processes are a matter of chemistry and physics. Its activities, a matter of mechanics, hydraulics, and magnetics. That sounds like a machine. All right. The contact between a man and his body is made by means of his etheric double, just as the contact between him and his car is made by the pressure of foot and hand on pedal, lever, and wheel. Sounds a lot like a machine, doesn't it? The analogy is an exact one, right? She said this is an exact analogy. For the body derives its energy from electrically determined internal combustion, even as does a car. And the consequences of depriving a car of petrol are precisely the same as the consequences of depriving a man of food and water. It is with the etheric double that we are concerned in the study of yoga, and the physical body only comes into it insofar as its postures determine the nature of the circuit in which its magnetism operates. That's a great one to highlight and think about. A lot, if not all, of the asanas, the yoga poses, are basically you're putting yourself in a living sigil, in a living yantra. And by placing yourself in that specific posture, you're connecting a certain kind of circuit for the etheric energy to flow through you and invoke and inspire a certain quality of prana. So even the physical yoga that everyone thinks of, even the asanas and poses and postures and stretches and whatnot, even that is primarily etheric. The physical body is the anchor that shapes itself into the sigil, but that's done so that the etheric body can resonate in a certain way. Beeble Bomb. Peace and greetings, Beeble Bomb. Hope you're having a pleasant evening. Zero says, finally, I get why for the whole picture of the yoga asanas. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I used to have this book. It was like a little short, it was like a small book. I think it was called Asanas, but it was like extremely thick. And it had like basically a picture of all the postures, I don't know, all the postures known and what they're called and what they do. I think that was a book that someone borrowed and never returned. But hey, I'm not really a physical person, so I wasn't using it anyways. I am blessed 82. Good evening, peace, and welcome. Thank you, Magus, just for being you. We don't know each other, but I'm so thankful for the knowledge and wisdom, etc. Gratitude right back to you, my friend. Gratitude right back to you. Peace and blessings tenfold. So check this out. The physical body is a lot like a vehicle. It is a vehicle. It's a lot like a car. I was reading in one of the Bihar School of Yoga books that went a little bit more in depth about the five sheaths, the five vehicles, right? And right here, she's talking about the Anamaya Kosha, the sheath of food, the physical body made of food, powered by food, which the Pranamaya Kosha is the etheric body, the energetic body that, is the hand that fits inside the glove. Let me read that again. The physical body is of the earth. It's earthy. Its processes are a matter of chemistry and physics. Its activities, a matter of mechanics, hydraulics, and magnetics. The contact between a man and his body is made by means of his etheric double. Just as the contact between him and his car is made by pressure of foot and hand on pedal, lever, and wheel. The analogy is an exact one. For the body derives its energy from electrically determined internal combustion, even as does a car. And the consequences of depriving a car of petrol are precisely the same as the consequences of depriving a man of food and water. It is with the etheric double that we are concerned in the study of yoga, and the physical body only comes into it in so far as its postures determine the nature of the circuit in which its magnetism operates. The primary unit of matter is agreed to be the electron, which, as its name implies, is a unit of electrical energy believed to be of the nature of a vortex. We talked about vortexes in the cosmic doctrine. No man has seen an electron with the naked eye. However, nor yet the atom, which is held to be composed of a constellation of electrons, nor yet the molecule, which is believed to be formed of a group of atoms. Any one of these is, taken by itself, too small for our perception. We have to conduct our investigation of matter in mass, as it were, and deduce from our study of its bulk the nature of its units. We know enough to know with certainty and precision that matter is not self-existent in the form in which we perceive it, but is the end result of the organization of pre-existent energy. It used to be believed that energy was the result of the breaking down of physical molecules, but we know nowadays that electrical and radioactive forms of energy exist apart from the combustion or chemical combination of material substances. But as we do not know of any form of existence of physical substance, even the most inert, that does not possess its own inherent energy. We may reasonably conclude that the existence of energy preceded the existence of matter, and that there may be a transitional phase which can aptly be termed pre-matter, or materializing force according to which way we look at it. Interesting. Cosmic Puzzle Piece says, hello, Travis, and everyone. That's why I interpret the gunas as gas, neutral, and brakes. Interesting. Interesting. Christina says, my etheric aura reaches 777 dimensions. Watch out now. Druichi Drow, peace and greetings this evening. Welcome. Pre-matter. Pre-matter. So what are we talking about with this pre-matter? Physical science is beginning to tell us something about the nature of the magnetic field of the physical body, which esotericists call the aura. But for any detailed information on the subject, based on extended observation and experiment, we must go to the East and learn from the yogis, with, however, the handicap and complication that there is little love lost between East and West, and even less understanding, and that the yogis, having no scientific tradition of the pooling of knowledge, are masters of the sister arts of suppressio veri and suggestio falsi. Some Harry Potter spells right there, right? Suppression of the truth and suggesting of the false. Suggestio veri and suggestio falsi. The Indian initiate will not give out the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and the white initiate may not. Mm. Mm. You got to figure it out on your own. You got to figure it out. I was researching some information on the yoginis earlier today, and I was having a bit of difficulty getting exactly what I was looking for. The particular guru that I found mentioned certain things like you have to be initiated to get the real information here, but I can only give you this. I suppose that means I have to dig deeper. Isn't that obnoxious when you're doing occult research and the only answers you can find, the dude is saying, "Oh, well, you have to be initiated for this information. You have to be initiated." I'm gonna show you my initiation. I'm gonna show you my initiation, big dog. I, however, who am an initiate of the Western, but not the Eastern tradition, stand in a position of peculiar advantage. For I can take the Eastern teachings and methods and, comparing them with what I know of the Western methods, say, this is what you really mean, quite apart from what you choose to say. The sources of my information are the works of Sir John Woodruff, which are the only scholarly investigations in the field of yoga, and those of Madame Blavatsky, who knew a great deal, and knew a great deal more than she told. These, throwing light on each other and interpreted with the help of a working knowledge of the principles of physics and a pretty intimate knowledge of not only the principles, but the practical applications of psychology, combined with a quarter of a century's experimenting and observing in this remote and rocky field, have supplied me with such explanations as I have to offer concerning the science and art of yoga. I do not fancy I am very far out so far as I go, though I do not for one moment flatter myself by believing that I know all there is to know. It is only a mortal, as ignorant as he is rash, who will set a limit to knowledge in any direction. I heard that. I have no doubt that what I have to say will be criticized and discredited as not according to the Oriental equivalent of Cocker by those qualified, or who consider themselves qualified, or who are believed when they say they are qualified to speak from within the veil. Nevertheless, I believe that I have, in some measure, at any rate, succeeded in drawing back that veil because what I have to say can be tried out experimentally and proved to work. That's the key right there. That's the key right there. You can claim what you want to claim. What you say. I have no doubt that what I have to say will be criticized and discredited as not according to the Oriental equivalent of Cocker by those qualified, or who consider themselves qualified, or who are believed when they say they are qualified to speak from within the veil. Nevertheless, I believe that I have, in some measure, at any rate, succeeded in drawing back that veil. Why? Because what I have to say can be tried out experimentally and proved to work. That's the credentials right there. It must be borne in mind, however, that the Occidental viewpoint diverges fundamentally from the Oriental, just as the Europeans' physical habits differ from the Asiatics. I do not therefore admit the plenary authority of Oriental exports on the subject of yoga for Europeans, but regard them as sources of information rather than a kind of multiple papacy. I have observed unfortunate and even disastrous consequences follow upon disregard of this precaution, ranging from nervous exhaustion and incoordination through various degrees of mental unbalance to a death in acute mania. Yoga is not foolproof, and it is possible by the indiscreet use of its methods to disorganize one's etheric double very thoroughly, and one then sees the part of the etheric double plays in one's economy. It affords the key to more than is realized. Well, that's got to be some bad yoga. Bad yoga. To discombobulate the etheric double? Sheesh. Who is teaching that? Cthulhu, peace. Cthulhu says elemental energy as in the land spirits, fae. I'm sure they could be considered under that umbrella. Absolutely. In this particular chapter, though, she's speaking a bit more general as far as um, elemental energy in relation to the physical body and the etheric body, and in terms of being used as fuel. Cthulhu asks, do you use the headless ritual, or some call it the bornless ritual, to control elemental energy? No, I do not. I tested it out a few times, but that's not really my style of doing it. I define the etheric double as the magnetic field of the physical body, the existence of which requires no demonstration by me, being a well established fact. We will therefore proceed to the next question. Whence does the etheric double derive the energy that animates it? Where does the etheric double derive the energy that animates it? Physical science regards it as the emanation of the physical body, and its energy is derived therefrom. Esoteric philosophy disagrees with this, believing the physical body to derive its existence from the etheric double, and that the magnetic field surrounding living creatures, of which the scientist is well aware, is the unabsorbed portion of this basic energy. See the flip flop? You see the flip flop? Most people think that the physical body is the source of consciousness, but esoteric science believes that consciousness is the source of the physical body. The esoteric philosopher, therefore, does not regard the physical body as the source of magnetic energy, and therefore he does not, if he is well informed, regard the diet and regimen of the body as directly affecting consciousness, but rather as affecting the body itself, and thus rendering it either an efficient or an inadequate instrument of consciousness, just as the mechanical condition of a car does not make any difference to the health of the chauffeur, though it makes a very great distance to the efficacy of his work. You see that? You see that? Look, the esoteric philosopher, therefore, does not regard the physical body as the source of magnetic energy. Therefore, he does not, if he's well informed, regard the diet and regimen of the body as directly affecting consciousness. Look, the esoteric philosopher, if he is well informed, does not regard your vegan diet, your fruitarian diet, your alkaline water, does not regard the diet and regimen of the body as directly affecting consciousness, right? Those two things are on different levels of existence. But check it out. It does affect, right? Or rather, as affecting the body itself, and thus rendering it either an efficient or an inadequate instrument of consciousness. That's it, plain and simple. Just as the mechanical condition of a car does not make any difference to the health of the chauffeur, though it makes a very great difference to the efficacy of his work. Capiche? The principal sources of our knowledge of yoga are Hindu. And the Hindu not only has religious objections to the eating of meat, but is condemned by custom and circumstance to exist on a diet which all authorities agree to be definitely unsatisfactory. He is born and bred in malnutrition. This applies to the well to do as well as the less prosperous sections of the community. because Indian ideas on dietetics and hygiene in general are, to put it mildly, not well informed. What is luxury for an Indian is privation for a European, and their respective physiological processes have adapted themselves accordingly. Zero says, I saw it like if the physical body is a tentacle of the consciousness. Yeah, that's how I see it. I see all of our incarnations as tentacles of this higher self, and this higher self being a tentacle of what's above it. Tentacles all the way down. I invoke thee, the bornless one. But why? It is a well known fact that fasting leads to what are called hallucinatory or revelatory visions, according to the viewpoint. But let us bear in mind that hallucinatory visions can be revelatory, as Freud pointed out in respect of dreams. Even though they bear no relation to the facts of objective existence, they may and often do bear a very definite relationship to the facts of subjective existence. All religious disciplines, Catholic, Mohammedan, and Buddhist, as well as yoga, have availed themselves of this principle in order to afford their devotees direct mystical experience. For this and such methods are undoubtedly efficacious, but so is the use of hashish, mescal, and other hallucination producing drugs. And these have been used from time immemorial for precisely this purpose. Mescal being the sacred plants of the Indians of the New World, and hemp, from which bang or bang, a form of hashish, is made, occupying a similar position in Asia. Whether the method of extending consciousness by the chronic method of restrictive dieting or the acute method of drugging or fasting, the results, though psychologically efficacious, are physically disastrous. These results are, in my opinion, obtained by altering the balance of energy between the physical and the etheric bodies till their normal polarity is reversed, and the latter predominates. The physical body, so far as its physiological processes go, is under normal conditions a self regulating mechanism. But there are certain states in which the automatic level of the mind suffers invasion by the subconscious level. There are certain states in which the automatic level of the mind suffers invasion by the subconscious level. Hysteria is an outstanding example of this condition, but there are also subtler and less readily recognized conditions among the neurotic states, and even more elusive forms of dual control when prolonged emotional tension reacts on all levels of the being. It is this latter condition which affords the fruitful field tilled by the various forms of mind healing. And to say this is not to disparage them, for they meet a great need which orthodox medicine cannot deal with. A man is no less ill if the working of his stomach or his kidneys is upset by prolonged anxiety than if they are disordered by invading bacteria. A man is no less ill, right? You the same level of sick, the same level of sick, whether the working of his stomach or kidneys is upset by prolonged anxiety or if they are disordered by invading bacteria, right? The result is the same. But in addition to such unconscious and undirected interference with the automatic control of the bodily functions, it is possible to achieve conscious and directed control of them, of your subconscious mind, and through it, You can acquire control of your automatic mind, and so of the physiological processes usually regarded as beyond the influence of the will. Yoga practices by concentrating the attention on the breathing, the heartbeat, and the principal nervous plexus cause us to become conscious of them. And as we become conscious of them, we acquire control of them. The yoga method of picturing in the imagination the inflowing and outgoing of the pranic force as rays or clouds of light is an effectual method of manipulating the subconscious mind, which responds to the imagination but not to the will. The subconscious mind responds to the imagination but not to the will. The yogi employs this method for the culture of the etheric double, which is as responsive to exercise and regimen as its physical counterpart, and can yield very remarkable results both as to physical energy and the extension of consciousness when thus trained and developed. But the line is narrow between the achievement of control of the etheric double and the breaking in upon the automatic control of the physiological processes. And it is here that danger lies. And to avoid it, the guru must be careful and experienced that the chela must be obedient, properly prepared, and working under suitable conditions. These conditions consist in good general health, a harmonious emotional life, and circumstances wherein freedom from disturbance for prolonged periods may be secured, so that the practitioner of these methods shall not only be able to build up his condition step by step without being in any way obliged to force the pace, but shall have ample leisure to convalesce from the higher states of consciousness, which cannot be borne by the mind for unduly long periods without disintegrating it. The building up process is well understood, but the coming back process is not so well understood because the Asiatic regards the higher trances as the supreme good and has not the slightest objection to it disintegrating his mind, the resulting lunacy being regarded as sainthood. Interesting, huh? The building up process is well understood, but the coming back process is not so well understood because the Asiatic regards the higher trances as the supreme good and has not the slightest objection to it disintegrating his mind, the resulting lunacy being regarded as sainthood. I'm sure we've all seen lots of content about how to raise your consciousness. I haven't seen too much content about how to reintegrate into normal reality. How to come back down from reaching enlightenment. Chicano says, I've been scammed. Nothing of this is leading to the 40 virgins. Is it? 40 virgins. And I wouldn't want, I don't know, that would imply that you'd have to have a body. Imagine going to heaven and needing a body. What are you going to do with 40 virgins without a body? Gotta love it, man. Got to love it. Wait, I think it was 72 virgins. I don't know. Nuru, peace and greetings. It's certainly been a minute. Most certainly been a minute. Good to see you. Zero says, man, I think that Indian hashish is another level of compared to what we know of as weed. Not to encourage to use it, just a thought. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Talk about scammed. I would feel scammed having a body in heaven. I would feel scammed still having desires and needing to fornicate. I'd be pissed off at that. Are we supposed to leave this back there on earth? Where's my bliss? Where's my unification? I want a refund. Lilith, peace and greetings. Welcome. Zero says, as a ghost for the living or supernormal person, because you transcend super and normal, that made you super normal. Rosa Flame says, you sure about that, Trev? Absolutely. In Fortnite, it's fun to, use a shield potion and heal yourself with a med kit, but I don't want to do that when I'm not playing Fortnite anymore. The building up process is well understood, but the coming back process is not so well understood because the Asiatic regards the higher trances as the supreme good and has not the slightest objection to it disintegrating his mind, the resulting lunacy being regarded as sainthood. The European, however, has different values. And though he may esteem the illuminations of extended consciousness quite as highly as his Eastern instructor, he also values what the Asiatic devotee does not value in the very least: the integration of the personality. Remember, that's the lower self. Knowing that if he fails to maintain this and becomes incapable of self maintenance, he will not be supported by voluntary contributions as a saint, but become chargeable on the rates as a pauper lunatic. There's a difference right there between the East and the West. Generally speaking, right? We can say that in the East, you reach a certain level of illumination, and you're generally treated as someone who has you know, celebrated, I guess, looked up to, and you can receive some donations from the community and some food and rice, and you're taken care of, so to speak. Not in the West, though. You can reach enlightenment, and you still got to pay rent. You still got to buy food. Car notes still due, right? College debt still due. Sally Mae still expecting her check. Then what do you want to do? I don't. I don't want to do nothing, man. I don't want to do nothing. I'm tired of this church. Well, that's too damn bad. Chicano says most personalities in America are based on commercials and music videos. Mixtapes not in the toilet. Yeah, man. Why be yourself when there's already something for you to be? There's already an archetype for you to step into. Land of the memes. Everything depends on the viewpoint in these matters, and it is not well to accept as a leader one who is heading for the next world as fast as he knows how, unless one has finished with this world. Drats. Everything depends on the viewpoint in these matters, and it is not well to accept as a leader one who is heading for the next world as fast as he knows how, unless one has finished with this world. One may regard the body as an encumbrance from which the spirit must be freed, or one may regard it as an instrument through which the spirit must be expressed. These are divergent viewpoints and lead to divergent ends. And one needs to be quite clear which one subscribes to when one selects a guru, or one may find oneself in the position of the passenger who was taken on to Manchester when he wanted to go to Crewe. It is for these reasons that I do not recommend the practice of yoga to Europeans. But I fully acknowledge the value of its study by Western occultists and frankly admit my debt to it. There can be little doubt that it was something of the nature of yoga that Miss Atwood found to be the key to alchemy, though she described it in terms of animal magnetism of her day. And it was a realization of its dangers as well as its powers that caused her to destroy the whole edition of her suggestive inquiry. Rosa Flame says, man, that one guy came in here calling Dion intermediate. Well, hey, maybe he knew something we didn't know. That's always a possibility, right? Maybe he knew the real stuff. Maybe he was initiated. We had to seek initiation from wherever he got it from. And hey, it exists. There's more advanced material out there. I'd imagine that once you get a hold of that, though, you're not hanging around in places that are not on your level, but what do I know? What do I know? Okie dokie, good chapter. Let's check out this next one. Currents of force in the etheric double. Interesting, man. Interesting. And see, I was just getting back into my studies of prana, and the top was it all lines up. Chicano says you just got to choose your mixtape. Trav's on the ones and twos for me, and on replay, not really. You have too many videos. I'm trying to catch up. Okay, I'll be quiet. Well, you know how it goes. What you need pops up when you need it. Always. The Circuit of Force, Part 3, June 1939, Dion Fortune. The energy substance out of which the etheric double is organized is called various names and divided into various grades, according to whether yoga or the Kabbalah be the tradition that is followed. To call it etheric energy, as is often done in the West, is to confuse it with the better known ether of the physicists, which is undoubtedly an aspect of it, but by no manner of means the whole. It was referred to by the older mesmerists as ode or odic force, and unquestionably formed the basis of their experiments. Another of its manifestations has been described as ectoplasm. Oh, that's what they were talking about. In the East, the well-known terms of prana and kundalini are used to describe different aspects of it. We, however, cannot do better than adopt the term elemental force to distinguish it from the purely physical forms of energy on the one. on the one hand and astral force on the other. Aha. Prana, kundalini, odic force, ectoplasm, elemental force. So does that mean that the elemental spirits? Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is why you train them by your repeated emotional expressions and your repeated behaviors. Marquetta Bainham, peace and greetings. Welcome, welcome. This elemental force appears to vibrate like an alternating current between earth and heaven. Remember that from Stalking the Wild Pendulum? This elemental force appears to vibrate like an alternating current between heaven and earth, and also to run as a circuit of force around the earth. Living creatures, and in a lesser degree, inanimate objects, appear to pick up their share of elemental force from these sources of energy and build and maintain their etheric bodies with it, just as the physical body has its intake of nourishment from physical sources. Uh huh. Uh huh. So, just as the physical body, the anamaya kosha is the sheath made of food, the pranamaya kosha is the sheath made of prana, right? So, the physical body is the body literally constructed out of food. The etheric body is the body constructed out of prana. So, look at this. This elemental force, and what was the elemental force? Shit, prana, kundalini, odic force, ectoplasm. We have 100 names for it. 100 names for it. But we're going to call it elemental force. This elemental force appears to vibrate like an alternating current between heaven and earth and heaven. So it's vibrating as high as you can fathom and as low. That's the, what do you call it? That's the frequency of it. That's the snippet of its complete revolution of up and down. This elemental force appears to vibrate like an alternating current between earth and heaven, and also to run as a circuit of force around the earth. That sounds like a spiral to me. It's not only going up and down, but it's going left and right. Living creatures, and in a lesser degree, inanimate objects, so that's everything, appear to pick up their share of elemental force from these sources of energy and build and maintain their etheric bodies with it. So you're saying inanimate objects have etheric bodies? Your elemental spirits. You picking up what I'm putting down here? Living creatures and, in a lesser degree, inanimate objects appear to pick up their share of elemental force from these sources of energy and build and maintain their etheric bodies with it, just as the physical body has its intake of nourishment from physical sources. Every creature and object seems to have its normal charge of elemental force, but under certain conditions can be supercharged. This technique of this supercharging is called talismanic magic, or consecration when applied to inanimate objects, and yoga when applied to human beings. Interesting. Interesting. This supercharging. I'd have to say, hands down, talismanic magic is the primary type of magic that I perform. By leagues, by yards, by miles. So we call it consecration when we apply it to inanimate objects. You might consecrate your magical tools or your favorite jacket. But we call it yoga when it's applied to human beings. So when you're doing yoga, you're doing the same thing as blessing the objects that you use for your practice. Yoga, then, is a form of psychophysical culture wherein the mind directs the currents of elemental energy in the etheric body and thereby develops that body just as its physical counterpart is developed by gymnastics. The centers of force and the channels connecting them being as susceptible to cultivation as the muscles and senses. Okay, so since this keeps coming up, there's a snippet of another text that I would like to share with you. Um, Give me a second. I'm going to grab it. This will most definitely be useful and appropriate. Hang on. Hungry yet? No. Okay. All right. So, I'm going to read a little bit from the Sri Vijnana Bhairava Tantra by Swami Satyasangananda Saraswati. You know it's serious when I'm back in these Bihar school books and getting 3 stripes across the top. You know you're about to get some deep learning. So, 24, Dharana on 2 generation points. Let's see. Yeah, so we're going to talk just briefly about the sheaths and prana. We're not going to read this whole chapter, but I'm just going to read a little bit of what I saw earlier. Check this out. Here, the first upaya, or practical method of dharana, is revealed. If you have this book, by the way, the Sri Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, this is on page 148. If you have this book, it's on page 148. So here, the first upaya, or practical method of dharana, is revealed. This upaya can be treated either as an individual dharana or as a part of the series of dharanas from shlokas 24 to 31 that leads to the experience of awakening, ascent, and merging of kundalini with Param Shiva. Awareness of the pranic flow is the medium for these preliminary dharanas. Thus, in order to understand this dharana, it is necessary to know how the pranic flows are generated within the body, where their source is, and what functions they assume in the process of manifestation. Here's your 5 koshas, right? Your Annamaya kosha is your physical body. The Pranamaya kosha, that's your etheric body, which is what we're talking about, these 2. Let's get into it. Paradevi is the transcendental energy which, as the sum total of all energy in the universe, is responsible for creation or manifestation. This manifestation goes on all the time. It never stops. If it were to stop, life would come to an end. Paradevi manifests in the physical body as Prana Shakti, the life force. You may have seen her in Tattvashuddhi. Prana Shakti is one force, but it has many jobs to do. So at the individual level, it assumes 5 fields or energy bodies known as koshas, each more subtle than the other. The first is known as Annamaya kosha, the physical sheath made up of food. The second is Pranamaya kosha, the vital sheath of energy, vital energy sheath, forming a fine network through which prana flows. Pause right there. That's your energy body. That's your etheric body. the pranamaya kosha, it's like a fine network through which prana flows. It's almost like this web. It's almost like this wireframe texture around you, and the prana is flowing through it. The third body, the third sheath, is the manomaya kosha, the mental sheath, which is more concentrated and a subtle form of energy that surrounds the pranamaya kosha. The fourth is vijnanamaya kosha, the intuitive sheath, an extremely rarefied field of energy, which is closer to spirit than to matter, surrounding the mental sheath. The fifth is anandamaya kosha, the sheath of bliss, where prana shakti is united with the supreme self. So here we go. Here's a picture of the pranic body, right? And the different types of prana that are flowing through you and where they're located. You can see it with your eyes. I wanted to read about these 5 types of prana because honestly, that's what she's talking about here. And, this was written 1939, almost 100 years ago. She didn't get into the details, but this right here is just going to add some excellent seasoning to this delicious 5-course meal we have here. So you've got udana, you've got what's called prana, but it's not like she's gonna mention here that there's like 2 types of what's called prana. Then there's samana, apana, and vyana. Vyana pervades the whole body, so it's not really listed here. But so you've got some that controls like the automatic process of your breathing. You've got some that controls the upper body. You've got some that controls the center of your body. You've got some that control the evacuation processes. And you've got some that control like, your legs and stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just like the 5 elements, huh? Kevros God says mantras affect all 5. Well, the thing is, yeah, right? But it depends on the type of mantra that you're doing. Some mantras are hyper directed to affect certain things, and others kind of affect all in general. There are rituals and practices that are designed to affect the highest Anandamaya kosha through the Pranamaya kosha. So what I mean is, by physically doing the ritual and by visualizing it, you're slowly stirring up that highest level. What she says in Tattva Shuddhi is that you can't directly affect Anandamaya kosha, not directly. But what you can do is keep up a consistent practice of rituals in the prana body, and over time it will redirect the Anandamaya kosha. So mantras affect all 5? Yes. Rituals affect all 5? Yes. To be honest, it depends. Certain rituals are going to affect certain things directly. Bij mantras and like them old, Sri Sandarya Lahiri, them old school type mantras, those are going to affect all 5 for certain. Anyway, let's continue with this text. Within the physical body there are also many roles which prana shakti, or the vital energy, must play. So the prana maya kosha, that's your energy body, mentioned above, is further subdivided into 5 categories or functions. So this is your energy body that Dion Fortune is talking about in this chapter, right? This is it right here, the pranic body, and the 5 types of prana that pervade the energy body, which press down on your physical body the same way that you press down on the gas or the brakes in your car. Monica Lawan, peace and greetings. Good evening, good evening. So the pranamaya kosha mentioned above is further subdivided into 5 categories or functions: prana, apana, samana, udana, and vyana. These 5 pranas create a pranic field around the body, which is vital for our existence, because through it we are linked to the cosmic prana, or prana shakti. If our perception were finely tuned into the pranic field, we would see a body of light. Oh, that's why they call it body of light. We would see a body of light having the same shape as the physical body, in which there are thousands of delicate wire-like structures conducting Shakti, or energy. Now, see, you thought Shakti was a woman in the sky somewhere. The link between the first two koshas, Annamaya kosha and Pranamaya, is the breath. This is why breathing techniques directly influence these sheaths in such a manner that generates well-being, balance, and harmony within. But if the Pranamaya kosha is to be activated for the purpose of higher spiritual experience, then these practices in concentration and visualization are necessary. These practices of concentration and visualization are necessary. This is because concentration alone can direct the heightened awareness that develops as a consequence of the pranamaya practices. Although pranamaya practices are extremely useful for balancing the energy and clearing the pranic pathways, these practices cannot achieve the same results that dharana, or concentration, can. This is because concentration of mind activates the manomaya kosha, and it is the mental rather than the physical energy that is the key to controlling the pranic forces. So check it out. What's going on here? Right now, we've got a little sandwich between the physical body, the energy body, and the mental body. Dharana is going to directly affect the mental body, right? Which is good because it can help to control, directing your attention to the mental body will help you focus the energy body. But see, there's a love triangle going on here between these three forces. So, although pranamaya practices are extremely useful for balancing the energy and clearing the pranic pathways, these practices cannot achieve the same results that dharana, or concentration, can. This is because concentration of mind activates the manomaya kosha, and it is the mental rather than the physical energy that is the key to controlling the pranic forces. There's a difference between influence and control. This is a big lesson that you learn when you practice magic for a long time, right? All of us come into this game wanting to control everything, right? You want to lay down the law with your will. Oh, it's my will and I will and all that shit. But over time you start to realize it's not about control, it's about influence. You start to get subtle with it. There's a difference between influence and control. The physical energy of Annamaya kosha, the physical body, can influence the vital energy of the Pranamaya kosha, the etheric body, but it cannot control it. Your physical body cannot control your energy body. You can influence it though. To do that, mental energy is required because the mind is a subtler and superior force. So you see that? Understand that you've got a physical body that's in this game, you've got an energy body that's in this game, and you got a mental body. You're working with all three of those tools at the same time. Right now, you're working with your physical tool, your energy tool, and your mental tool. The first evolute of cosmic prana is also called prana, but these two should not be confused. One is transcendental energy, and the other is individual energy, which is its evolute. To me, if I were to translate that, I'd say that one belongs to the lower self, one belongs to the higher self. So one is transcendental energy, and the other is individual energy, which is its evolute. The individual prana further divides into the 5 koshas, the energetic bodies. And the pranamaya kosha further evolves into the sub-pranas, right here. The individual prana further divides into the 5 koshas, or the energetic bodies. And the pranamaya kosha further evolves into the sub-pranas, which are referred to in this shloka. These subtle sub-pranas, which form the pranic body, further manifest as the physical breath, and through its medium, influence both the body and the mind in a very dramatic way, affecting the way we think, feel, act, and speak. In fact, neither the body nor the mind can function without prana. Therefore, by controlling these pranas, we can effectively control the body and the mind. Swami Sivananda has said prana is related to the mind. Through the mind to the Sankalpa Shakti or willpower, through the willpower to the individual soul, and through the individual soul to the Supreme Being. When the breath is directed by the mind under the control of the will, wonders can be achieved in all spheres of life, from personality development to healing, as well as spiritual experience. Therefore, if you know how to control the forces of prana flowing through the mind, then the secrets of the universal prana, or paradevi, will be known to you. Yogis consider prana to be superior to the mind, as prana is present even when the mind is absent in deep sleep. This implies that prana plays a more vital role in our lives than the mind. Of course, the science of Raja Yoga teaches control of the fluctuations of the mind, whereby the pranas are suspended as a consequence. But it is a very difficult and tedious process to isolate the mind from the ego and the senses. In Tantra, however, the same result is attained by controlling and awakening the pranas. Mhm. Of course, there's more. There's a whole lot more, but I just wanted to talk about that part. This is the text. If you don't have it, if you're interested in it, Sri Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. There's a lot. There's many versions of this text, right? But this particular one is written by this author. I think I have like 6 versions of this. Of course, I like this one best because the way that the Bihar school folks write is very, very clean and clear and easy to understand. All right. That was the East. Now back to the West. Dion Fortune. Cosmic Puzzle Piece says Nama Shivaya, the 5 syllables for the 5 elements. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Alkalinity Light. Om Bhuva Swaha. I went to sleep to it without knowing the words, but remember it. Yeah, man. That's a good one. I need to tap back into that one. Zero says Chaos Magic's goal is working on the mental body directly. I asked this because of the belief as a tool. I don't know. This pops up in my head. I would say yes. I would say yes. Especially if we're talking about, just like the entry to chaos magic, like Libra, Null, Psychonaut, and the Peter J. Carroll texts. A lot of it is about reframing, total reframing of how you see the world, how you walk through it, which is affecting the mental body. Cthulhu said that's 72 women complaining. That's hell. Yeah, man, you're not gonna sway me with that deal. I don't think I'd want that as a living being. That's way too much to deal with. Cosmic Puzzle Piece says, Bro, Bhairava is the god I've been working with for months. Thank you for your work. Because you might be the one who brought that current in this direction. Chicano says, I'm just going to meditate on the lines from the book cover for now. Hey, that works. That works. Christina Palacios says, I recommend remembering the 1993 movie X, the movie when you literally have a Earth or Heavens draconic deciding if they are going to destroy the Earth or let it live. Live and let live. Princes and princess. I don't, that doesn't sound familiar to me. It's called X, 1993 X. Hmm. I feel like I might have seen a preview for that at some point in the recent past. Malcolm X came out in 1992. Well, back to the unfortunate. Where were we? Yoga then is a form of psychophysical culture wherein the mind directs the currents of elemental energy in the etheric body and thereby develops that body just as its physical counterpart is developed by gymnastics. The centers of force and the channels connecting them being as susceptible to cultivation as the muscles and senses. A great deal is recorded in tradition, both oral and written, concerning the etheric body and its channels of force. But in a matter where suggestion and auto-suggestion play so large a part, it is not easy to distinguish between objective force and psychic convention. A good deal can be learnt by comparing the Eastern and Western systems, yoga and the Kabbalah, for those things in which they agree may be taken as being established in objective experience and not as auto-suggested conventions. Bearing in mind, however, that auto-suggested conventions have their very definite uses in the modus operandi of the psychic, provided they are never mistaken for anything but what they are, for that way lies superstition and hallucination. Both Eastern and Western systems agree in recognizing a main current of magnetic force corresponding to the central line of the body. Kabbalists call it the middle pillar. Both Eastern and Western systems agree in recognizing a main current of magnetic force corresponding to the central line of the body. Kabbalists call it the middle pillar. I hesitate to be dogmatic as to what the yogis call it, for there are so many schools of yoga and such a multiplicity of subtle subdivisions of terminology that I can hardly hope to escape the charge of inaccuracy from one source or another if I enter on that thorny field. Let it suffice to say that East and West are in agreement concerning the central vertical line of force. The East also recognizes two side channels of force, which it calls Ida and Pingala, and the West recognizes the pillars of mercy and severity. But whereas the yogi locates these channels centrally as subdivisions on the central channel, the Kabbalist places the pillars of equilibrium, as they are called, outside the body, in the aura, and equates them with the limbs. Both East and West, however, are agreed in recognizing these side channels of positive and negative force after the analogy of a magnetic circuit. Whether they are located alongside the spine or projected into the aura being, in my opinion, entirely a matter of where they are placed and cultivated according to the system that is used, and I have worked with both systems and obtained results with both. Hmm. Ida and Pingala, isn't isn't there like a third channel? Isn't there like a third channel that balances the Ida and Pingala? Maybe I'm mistaken. There is a certain amount of difference concerning the location of the centers or chakras between the two systems. The Hindu locates the basal one in the sacral plexus, and the Kabbalistic places it under the feet. This was kind of game changing for me when I read this the first time. The Hindu locates the basal one in the sacral plexus, and the Kabbalist places it under the feet. This difference of position is readily understood. We're talking about the root chakra here. You might have seen diagrams where the root chakra is at the base of your spine, and sometimes you'll see it at the bottom of the feet. This difference of position is readily understood when it is remembered that the Hindu habitually meditates squatting, so that it is his sacrum which forms his earth terminal. And the European meditates either sitting or lying down, with his lower limbs extended and his aura consequently extended with them. The most important point in this connection, however, is to be found in the fact that the yogi invariably meditates in one of the asanas or special postures, with one or both feet tucked into his groin, and works on his etheric body while it is in its normal relationship to his physical body. It is for this reason that he contorts himself into what the European considers fantastic postures in order to bring the magnetic currents into the position in which he wants them to function. The Kabbalah-trained European, on the other hand, relaxes his body and works with the etheric double projected, and this is a very important distinction of method. I've tried both methods, and in my opinion, the Eastern method is incomparably the more efficacious. In actual practice, so far as my experience goes, the Western adept merely throws his etheric double out of gear and projects his astral body when he tries to do this operation. And the result, whatever else it may be, is not Hatha Yoga. And it is quite certain that although psychism is developed by this method, the etheric body is practically unaffected. It is also my experience that a far more powerful concentration of force is obtained when the lower legs are bent on themselves in the squatting posture, and the aura consequently retracted. Most Europeans, however, cannot achieve this position, being much more heavily boned and muscled than the Hindus, owing partly to racial characteristics and partly to the fact that an inadequate diet produces a laxness of ligaments that permits of contorted attitudes. I myself can speak of these postures with some degree of experience, for being born at a time when the science of nutrition was not as well understood as it is now, I am blessed, or more accurately speaking, cursed with elastic ligaments. And from my earliest childhood to the present day, I habitually sit cross-legged. Siddhasana is a normal posture with me, and Padmasana presented no particular difficulties after a little practice. Flexible. Speaking from my own experience, I find the cross-legged posture invaluable for meditation, but do not think that Padmasana worth the trouble of achieving. The point to be borne in mind in this matter is that the aim of the posture is to make the sacral plexus the earth contact of the central pillar, and that this is achieved if the aura is retracted to the size of the torso and the legs folded upon themselves in such a manner that the soles of the feet are turned upwards and raised above the level of the base of the spine. So see, like right there, you're changing the shape of your physical body so that the aura, the energy body, resonates in a different way. Very cool. Very cool. Chikano says in the book Tibetan Dream Yoga, he says instead of focusing on a specific chakra outside of chakra work, focus on the central channel. Focus on the central channel. Romulus says Sushumna is the central nadi that provides balance of the masculine and feminine energies. Zero says, I have a self proved experiment. I never look if this helps to balance the Muladhara chakra, but in my experience, long but enjoyable walks is amazing for that too. I know not at the level of specific practice like this, just as a supplement for the actual practice. Yeah, I think that you're onto something there because when we talk about the Muladhara chakra, we are talking about the earth contact. So whether that's sitting down to meditate or actually walking with your feet, I think that walking meditation is most definitely a solid grounding meditation. One of the primary ones that I use, honestly. Chicano says, would you say the Western way of relaxing, then working with the etheric body? That sounds like Straya meditation you talk about. I totally misspelled it. Yeah, yeah, the Chiasterium. The Chiasterium. Hmm. And to be honest, hell, that's probably why the good Swami included that before Chakra Shuddhi and Dharana Darshan, because, they knew that these books were going to primarily be marketed to Western audiences. The most difficult part for us would be the Chiasterium, forcing yourself to be still for 15 minutes. That's probably the most difficult meditation in that book. Chiasterium. Speaking from my own experience, I find the cross-legged posture invaluable for meditation, but I do not think that Padmasana is worth the trouble of achieving. The point to be borne in mind in this matter is that the aim of the posture is to make the sacral plexus the earth contact of the central pillar, and that this is achieved if the aura is retracted to the sides of the torso and the legs folded upon themselves in such a manner that the soles of the feet are turned upwards and raised above the level of the base of the spine. This can be done by sitting cross-legged and putting a small cushion under the ankles. And although the agonies of achieving Padmasana are no doubt an excellent discipline for the soul and save the expense and dirt of a hair shirt, it has not been my experience that they have any beneficent effect on the etheric body. That cannot be achieved by the use of a small cushion, though I admit that the cushion does not make so impressive a display as a pair of legs tied in a bow knot. Another spectacular feat, the power to retract the right or left rectus abdominis muscle at will, is a mere trick achieved by digging the thumbs into the groins at the appropriate spot. It can, of course, only be done when a high degree of control of muscles of the abdomen has been achieved. What bearing it has on the spiritual development of the performer, I do not know, though it undoubtedly has a great deal on that of the onlookers. Um, what did I just read? Another spectacular feat, the power to retract the right or left rectus abdominis muscle at will. All right, let's go to Google. Which ones are the rectus abdominis muscles? Oh, okay. I was thinking something else. That clears it up. Good to know. Good to know. He's talking about the abdomen muscles, right? Like your six pack or lack thereof. Cthulhu says every cell in your body, is it an individual spirit? Are we just compiled of millions of different beings and the brain is just the one conscious that drives the car? So, primarily, I would ask you to be very clear on what you mean when you say the word spirit. What does that mean for you? Not for me. Don't give me a good sounding definition. What do you mean when you say individual spirit? That's gonna be a big help in answering your question. But for the rest of what you said, are we just compiled of millions of different beings and the brain is just the one consciousness that drives the car? Well, science tells us that we indeed are composed of millions of different beings, right? Your kidney cells have their own pattern of behavior, just like every other organ and system in your body. They all have their own pattern of behavior, which what we call an intelligence, right? They all exhibit their own form of intelligence. Um, I wouldn't say the brain is the one that's conscious. Your consciousness is aware of all of these systems and able to make use of all these systems. They're probably all conscious on their own, right? Um, your kidneys and your lungs probably don't care about your job or social media or whatever, but they do care about what you eat and how they're going to manage the glucose and the white blood cells and all that other shit. But yeah, you are a walking planet. You are a walking planet. Science tell you that. But I would suggest that you get clear on what you mean by individual spirit. What does that mean? What is a spirit? And again, not for me, for you. What does that mean to you? Let's continue. I ain't gonna lie to you. I'm probably not ever gonna try this again. I was able to do the pop masana, but yeah, I agree with her. I don't think I noticed any much of a difference in being able to do that. Looked great on Instagram though, right? Looks great for photos. But what the fuck is the point? All these psychophysical exercises have, so far as I can see, their value as a means to an end, the end of being the concentration of the attention upon the currents of force that constitute the etheric body, which is much more effectually achieved by means of the hatha yoga methods of the East than by purely psychological methods of the West. Therefore, I advocate the study of yoga principles, though I do not consider it necessary to break any bones in their practice, for it is in the mental aspect of these psycho-spiritual exercises that the real value lies. Right on, man, right on. And if you can do it, and if it's a passion for you, go for it. Give it your all, and extract what is there for you to extract. I'm not a very physical person, so I'm gonna leave that to those of you who can do it better than me. For sure. For surely. I have three asanas sitting at this computer, sleeping in my bed, and walking to the kitchen. Those are my 3 asanas. I'm an expert at those. Pork Hill, peace and greetings. Peace and greetings. Somebody sleeping in my bed, messing with my head. Somebody's taking my place. True Hill. All right, what we got? Subtle bodies. Subtle bodies. Oh, that's a short one. The psychic centers. Well, who knows? How we doing? Everybody all right? You good? Gucci. Sleeping in my bed, messing with my head. Star Lion, peace and greetings. All right, the subtle bodies. Hey, look, I'm curious. I'm asking a question here in this poll. Press 1 in the chat for yes. Press 2 in the chat for no. Have you felt the pull to begin or to continue or to ramp up Vedic mantras lately? That's my question. Have you felt the pull? Have you felt the subtle influence to do mantras? Maybe you haven't been doing them in a while. Maybe now you're like, yeah, let's do them some more. Or maybe you've been doing them and you feel like lately you've been increasing them. Hit 1 in the chat for yes and hit 2 for no. And that adds to my poll here. I'm just curious about that. Do that and give me a quick second. I'll BRB. Somebody sleeping in my sleeping in my bed. All right. Potency. Extreme potency. Let's get to it. The Subtle Bodies, The Circuit of Force, Part 4, July 1939. The Unfortunate. The anatomy of the etheric double has been the subject of many treatises and much speculation. Different psychics report different things, and although psychics trained at the same school may agree, the schools disagree among themselves. Hmm. Hmm. Broadly speaking, however, all schools agree in describing an ovoid of light surrounding the physical body in the same way as the white surrounds the yolk of an egg. Less advanced psychics describe this light as gray, silvery, and pale, or bright gold according to their power of perception and the type of aura. Highly developed psychics describe a rainbow appearance surrounding the human form. Framestar Films in the building. Peace and greetings. Peace and greetings from across the way. Hope you're doing well. Oh, so you're doing the conditioning. Is that what it is? Jerichi Drow says, when you do them often, you kind of automatically get reminders in your mind, at least in my experience. Absolutely. Man, listen. When I pick back up on my mantra practice, my first thought is, how did I ever stop? Um, yeah. I don't wanna hype it up too hard, but sheesh, man. These Vedic mantras are some of the most enjoyable and fastest working magic I've ever done. To this day, to this day. Like, I'm an explorer of all types of things, but geez Louise, when it's mantra time, you gotta worry about anything. No woman, no cry. No woman, no cry. So we're talking about the subtle bodies. All schools agree in describing an ovoid of light surrounding the physical body in the same way as the white surrounds the yolk of an egg. Highly developed psychics describe a rainbow appearance surrounding the human form. So which is correct? In my opinion, both are correct. The colorless grayish light is the basic etheric substance, increasing in brightness to silver or sparkling white, according to what may quite accurately be described as the voltage. When the golden radiance appears, a higher type of force seems to be manifesting through it. The basic silver gray cloud, however, persists, but is suffused by the brighter radiance of the golden light. These two types of radiance, I think all schools would agree in referring to those factors in manifestation, which are represented by, you guessed it, the lunar and solar spheres. We're talking gold and silver, right? The lunar and solar spheres. The rainbow colors perceived by still more highly developed psychics can, though with less unanimity of agreement, be referred to the various planetary spheres and the manifestations of force. Thus, we obtain a working scheme of agreement concerning the anatomy of the subtle body, so there's a new word, variegatedly described. I'm going to look up variegatedly, and I want to ask you in the chat, how many people here are able to see psychics, like to see auras. How many people here are able to see auras? Maybe not accurately every single time, but have you been able to do that before? Have you been able to see your own aura? Are you able to see auras on other people? And I'm going to look up variegatedly. Having streaks, marks, or patches of different color. Okay. Distinguished or characterized by variety. Having marks or patches of different color. That makes sense. Thus, we obtain a working scheme of agreement concerning the anatomy of the subtle body so variously and variegatedly described. So, having different patches of color. Cool. Okay. Um, Lilith says I can see my own sometimes. Right on. Well, here's my next question since you seem to be the only one in the chat. Has anybody tried to see auras, tried to see their own or anyone else's? Have you ever tried that before? Chicano says patches of color sounds like Ophiel. Yeah, yeah. Dang. Classic. I look fondly upon Ophiel. It's like that beloved first grade teacher. And you don't really realize all the lessons until you get older. Zero says, I've never been able to see auras, maybe one or two times. But one of my gym students one time saw mine and was pretty accurate of what I think it was. Right on. Cosmic Puzzle Piece says, every now and again, at times, I can be very accurate, but for the most part, I'm off. How do you know that you're off? Right? How do you know that you're off? Gabriel says, saw my egg-shaped aura during a mirror meditation. You know, I think I'm due for a mirror meditation. It's been a long time since I stared at myself for an extremely long time with a candle in front of me. I remember that was creepy when I first tried it around 2017 or so. Sitting in front of the mirror with the candle, your face start to transforming and morphing and shifting. I stuck it out though. I kept going. It's all the play of the mind. All right. Which is correct? Silver and gold, variegatedly patches of color. We may, for all practical purposes, consider the human makeup as consisting of a physical body of dense matter, which is subject to the known laws of chemistry, physics, and mechanics. A subtle body, obeying laws which appear analogous to what is known concerning electromagnetism and radioactivity. A mental body concerning which psychology has something to say, and could have a great deal more to say if it were not as deaf as the scriptural adder to all that does not fit in with the materialistic viewpoint. And at the core of all, a spiritual nucleus concerning which no one knows a great deal, save that it is to the man what the grain of sand is to the pearl. Hmm. Hmm. This spiritual nucleus is apparently the channel for a limitless flow of force from the unmanifest, which, far from being the inert emptiness pictured by the untutored imagination, is the powerhouse of the whole manifested universe. The other bodies, or vehicles, if the term be preferred, derive their pabulum from the basic substance of their respective planes in exactly the same manner as the physical body has its necessary intake of raw material in the form of food and drink. It appears to me important from the practical point of view to distinguish between the intake of form building and maintaining substance on each plane, and the dynamic energy emanating from the great unmanifest and coming in through the channel afforded by the spiritual nucleus. The exact nature of this spiritual nucleus and the nature of its relationship to the great unmanifest can only be a subject of speculation. But so far as I can see, what may best be called the divine spark or unit of manifestation itself belongs to the plane of the unmanifest, and the spiritual body is its first formed vehicle of manifestation. It is, I believe, very important to distinguish between the spiritual force which supplies the energy of the whole being on all planes of existence and the material for form building that has to be derived from each plane for the formation and upkeep of the vehicle of that plane. It is the failure to make this distinction which causes the prevailing uncertainty and inefficiency in manipulating the subtle aspects of our makeup. It is the failure to make this distinction which causes the prevailing uncertainty and inefficiency in manipulating the subtle aspects of our makeup. The failure to make what distinction? It is, I believe, very important to distinguish between the spiritual force, which supplies the energy of the whole being on all planes of existence. There's one. And the material for form building that has to be derived from each plane for the formation and upkeep of the vehicle of the plane. So, look, it's important to distinguish between these two things. One is the spiritual force. What was the last chapter called, by the way? So we talked about currents of force in the etheric double. I got to change that battery. The chapter before that was called spiritual and elemental energies. Remember that? Spiritual and elemental energies. And what she just said here was it's very important to distinguish between the spiritual force, which supplies the energy of the whole being on all planes of existence. That's one. And the other is the material for form building. That's your elemental forces. That's your Prakriti. She's talking Purusha Prakriti, Shiva Shakti. The material for form building that has to be derived from each plane for the formation and upkeep of the vehicle of that plane. So if it's the physical plane, you need your food and your drink to build and upkeep your physical body. If it's the etheric plane, you need prana to build and upkeep that prana maya kosha. If it's the mental plane, you need constellations of thought, patterns of thought to build up that mental body. Without those, there is no mental body, so on and so forth. In that way, Prakriti pervades all levels of existence. Prakriti is not just physical, tangible reality, but all form. All form. Mula Prakriti. And this is the same thing as Bina. The same thing as Bina. Caught in that web, caught in the womb. So the material for form building that is to be derived from each plane for the formation and upkeep of the vehicle of that plane. It is the failure to make this distinction between those two, right? The spiritual and the material. It's the failure to make the distinction which causes the prevailing uncertainty and inefficiency in manipulating the subtle aspects of our makeup. So you've got to know the difference. You got to at least be able to identify what you're working with at any given time. All right, let me change this battery. Battery. That's a Metallica song. Mm-hmm. All right. It is as if we took no account on the physical plane of the presence or absence of life in the body and tried to feed a dead man, only to find ourselves much perplexed when, in spite of our best efforts, he began to decompose instead of putting on weight. Or if, contrariwise, we thought it unnecessary to supply a living person with food on the ground that, being alive, he drew all of the energy he required from his own vitality. These things, these are things we see done daily by various schools of thought, from the most materialistic to the most mystic, who forget to take into account the exact working of the phrase, man cannot live by bread alone, forgetting that he cannot live without bread either. Fanatics of whatever type, whether materialistic or mystic, always appear to be people singularly lacking in common sense. It is also an odd fact that the term fanatic is reserved exclusively for application to the mystic and idealist, entirely ignoring the fact that the materialist and the rationalist can exhibit exactly the same traits of emotionally determined bias and absence of good sense and balanced judgment. Bearing these points in mind, we see that it is not only possible theoretically, but vitally necessary for practical work to distinguish between the development by intensive training of the spiritual, the mental, the astral, and the physical vehicles of man. Equally, we must bear in mind that they are all interacting, and we can no more develop one and ignore the others than we can cultivate the muscles while neglecting the corresponding development of the heart and lungs. An error that is made by many athletes, resulting in the premature death which so often befalls them. Even more clearly do we see the same principle exemplified in the case of such men as Darwin, Herbert Spencer, and Carlyle, whose physical infirmities, which we now know to have been purely nervous in origin, greatly handicapped them in their work. Or again, we see physically gifted people with such undeveloped mental vehicles that they were unable to avail themselves of their physical endowments. Each was entirely dependent on their respective managers and left to their own devices was helpless. Dang. Dang. We must now consider a point which is the key to the whole question of yoga and psychic development. Why is it that by the culture of the etheric double, we can produce psychism and magical powers? Why is it? Why is it? A great deal of advice has been given as to how this task should be carried out, but very little thought has been devoted, or at any rate, very little has been published concerning the rationale of the proceeding, which consequently has been left on a rule of thumb basis. It is well known to those who study such matters that the etheric double, that subtle electrical counterpart of the physical body, is the link between mind and matter. The etheric body, the etheric double, is the link between mind and matter. Orthodox science knows something about its manifestations in relation to the central nervous system, but psychology is entirely innocent of any realization on the part it plays in sensory consciousness. It is the culture of this etheric double, the link between mind and body, that is affected by Hatha Yoga, with such remarkable results on both mind and body. Let it be carefully noted, moreover, that the results of such cultivation are neither merely physical nor merely psychic, but concern the powers of the higher psychism as well, and lead on to genuine mystical experience, taking into consideration all that can be learnt not only from tradition, but also from personal experimentation in its degree. It appears highly probable that the different levels of consciousness are correlated with the centers in the aura recognized independently by the practical systems of both yoga and the Kabbalah. Man, mic drop. Mic drop. Taking into consideration all that can be learnt, not only from tradition, but also from personal experimentation in its degree, right? You have to do the work, not just read the books or listen to the folks that were before you. It appears highly probable that the different levels of consciousness are correlated with the centers in the aura recognized independently by the practical systems of both yoga and Kabbalah. So yeah, like we've all heard this. We've all heard this. Like some people are operating from their lower chakras, right? Most people are operating from their root chakra or their sacral chakra, and I'm operating from my third eye chakra. Well, these points of energy along the spine, they serve as symbols for many things. And one of these symbols that they serve to communicate to us is that they also represent levels of consciousness. Levels of consciousness. I mean, obviously, everybody's operating from a different level of consciousness. Everybody's not on the same page. Some people are far closer to animal consciousness than others, right? So, of course, the decisions that certain people make are going to be influenced heavily by what they identify as, what they identify with, and what they believe about the world, what they believe the world is telling them about themselves and about other people. Hey, 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 hey. All is truly well. Peace and greetings. Peace and greetings, Fat Tony. Welcome to the party. Cthulhu says, I identify as a panda. Well, hey, as long as it's producing results that you're happy with, do what it do. Do what you gotta do. Let's do one more. Let's do one more. All right. In the words of Bobby Hemmett, y'all all right? Spates Moody, peace and greetings. Welcome, welcome. See, this is spoken like somebody who is quite all right. Quite all right. Glad you're here. Glad you're enjoying this live stream and this book study. I don't know if you were here before. Yeah, you were, because you said you were working with Bhairava. Is that right? But yeah, I don't know if you have that text. I would highly suggest cracking it back open if you do. Any version of it, really. But of course, I'm always going to recommend the Bihar School of Yoga version. Because, man, when I committed to my mantra practice, I began to get immediate results. Immediate results. In hand results. Back to back. And all I could think was, why did I ever stop? Why did I ever move away from this? That's one thing. Take it from me. If you ever fall off, if you ever find yourself like drifting away from your practice, you can let go of your rituals, you can let go of your candles and all the other stuff, but don't ever stop doing your mantras. Even if you're just playing it on YouTube, do not ever stop doing your mantras. Even if it's as simple as Om Gam Ganapata Ye Namaha, right? Om Namah Shivaya. Don't ever stop doing your mantras. For many reasons. Many reasons. Primarily, what I have found, because lately my experimentation has been a lot with the elemental forces. I'm really, really seeking to understand the elementals at a deep, deep level, because what I'm seeing is how do I put it? It's like, even if you're like a CEO of a company, you don't speak directly with the low level employees. You speak to somebody, and that somebody sends the message to somebody else, and they send the message, and they send the message, and then it gets to the low level employees. And even on the way back up, right? The low level employees don't speak to the CEO. They take polls and do certain forms and shit, and it goes up the ladder, and eventually it gets to where it needs to be. In that same respect, every single thing that you do with your conscious awareness, you're interfacing with elemental forces. And it is these elemental forces that move it up the chain of command. Now, whether you're the CEO or the person who has to go out and fetch the carts from the parking lot in the hot sun by yourself, I mean, that's for you to decide. But what I'm saying is between the two poles of existence, there are there's this middleman, and the first point of contact is the elemental forces. So I've been looking to study these elemental forces, and I can most certainly say they are conditioned and influenced and trained by your emotional repetition and your mental repetition. They are also trained by mantra. There's something about the vibration of mantra over and over and over and over again that trains these elemental forces to do what they do. So even if you fall off and stop doing everything else, even if you fall completely off, you become a crackhead, don't stop doing your mantras, because that may be the only thing to get you back on your feet. Dear mama. All right. So like I said, we're going to do one more chapter, the psychic centers and their use. Give me just a moment. Framestar says Sri Yantra and mantras are part of my day-to-day these days. Absolutely. Absolutely. Cthulhu says Om, the sound of the universe. Even as simple as Om, like you might stop everything else, but listen to me. Do not ever, for the rest of your breathing, stop your mantras. More important than anything else. That's on Nanda. That's on Nanda and them. That's on Nanda and them. Chicano says, "Can we see the book on mantras? I just want to see the cover real quick. I bet it's sexy." Well, this is the one that I read from, right? Sri Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, the ascent. The ascent meaning we're dealing with consciousness. We're dealing with Shiva, right? We're dealing with going up the tree. I remember what she said in this book that we're currently reading. Everybody talks about going up, but nobody talks about coming down. Well, let's talk about the coming down. This is the one that I've been working from. I've always wanted to do a book study on this. But this is a deep text, man. Sri Sundarya Lahari, the descent. This is the worship of the goddess. Where this was the focus on Shiva, the god. This one's about the goddess, right? Monica Lawan, right? See, you know it was coming. We know it was coming. It's bound to happen. If you can find this text, I suggest it because there's about 104, I want to say, mantras that are all targeting different aspects, and try it for yourself. You'll see what all the hype is about. But yeah, give me a second. Oh, BRB. All right, all right. So, I have a deep love for spicy food. And at first, my son didn't like spicy food at all, but over time, it appears that he took it upon himself to raise his tolerance so he could eat spicy food with me. I thought that was pretty nice. So I've been cooking spicy meals. And today I told him about this legendary meal, Camarones del Diablo. I had them at this Mexican restaurant once upon a time. It was extremely spicy shrimp. And I think in my list, that was like the spiciest dish I ever had. So after cooking my son the spiciest dish I could make, and he ate it just fine, I let him know that he's now ready to be initiated by the Camarones del Diablo, the shrimp of the devil. Can't wait, man. I can't wait. Fun fact, when I was in high school, in my Spanish class, my Spanish teacher gave me the nickname El Diablo. She called me the devil every single day. Every single day. The psychic centers and their use. The Circuit of Force Part 4 continued August 1939, Dion Fortune. We now come to the detailed consideration of the chakras or psychic centers and their practical use. The Indian yoga tradition undoubtedly enshrines the wildest and profoundest knowledge available, for the Kabbalistic teaching on the subject, as I learnt it at any rate, is negligible. The best course of this knowledge is to be found in the works of Arthur Avalon, Sir John Woodruff, upon Tantra. Upon Tantra. Is this thing on? Yeah, it's on. Good to go. You guys can hear me, right? These books, however, are written in a very guarded manner so that the casual reader can glean little from them, and what he does obtain is profoundly misleading. Sir John Woodruff only defines his terms when using them in relation to purely metaphysical implications. When using them in relation to practical, psychic, or magical matters, he leaves them untranslated. Consequently, what the student needs is a translation of Arthur Avalon's translations. This I had laboriously to equip myself with before I could make any headway, for a Sanskrit dictionary is no use in this connection. The tantric gurus employing a kind of double entendre known only to the initiated. But as Hudibras has it, patience and perseverance made a bishop of his reverence. And the same made a yogi of me. I learned what I know by the dangerous method of self experiment, and more by good luck than good management. Survived to tell the tale, despite all sinister prognostications. The first fruits of my experience, such as they are, I am prepared to give out in order that they may form the basis of future research. No doubt, my knowledge is limited and imperfect as compared with that of Indian experts born and bred in the yoga tradition, but I am inclined to believe that it will prove to be of more practical use to Western students than any scholarly adherence to the traditional texts, for it is the fruit of actual experience of working in a Western body under Western conditions. My records are admittedly incomplete and imperfect, so but so far as they go, they are personal and practical, and they will, I believe, form more efficient guideposts for the experiments of others than the more elaborately documented, but more abstract and doctrinaire genre. It will certainly be said, and not without justice, by the orthodox exponents of the art, but this is not yoga. To which I reply, I never said it was. It is my own recipe, compounded from the works of Sir John Woodruff on the Tantra, Madame David Neal on Tibetan mysticism, Baldwin on autosuggestion, and the Kabbalistic method of the middle pillar as I learnt it in the Order of the Golden Dawn. Those who want to study this latter will find it exposed in the works of that able renegade, Israel Regardie. The Kabbalist accustomed to using the middle pillar will find it necessary to make careful distinction between his Malkuth and Yesod and the yogi's Muladhara and Svadhisthana chakras. Yeah, Malkuth and Yesod, Muladhara and Svadhisthana. The yogi locates both these in the auric equivalent of the pelvic region of the spine. The Kabbalist locates Yesod, the moon center, therefore, but places Malkuth under the feet in the same way as Kether is over the head, thus indicating that it likewise is a link with objectivity. In the Kabbalistic method, Malkuth is used as the earth contact, and the operator visualizes himself standing on it as if it were the globe of the earth swinging through space. And a remarkable magnetic flow is thus received. This current, derived according to tradition from the earth's aura, rises straight to Yesod in the sacral plexus and there becomes personal to the individual. Yesod, in fact, is a transformer of the universal elemental energy into personal magnetism. I said Yesod, in fact, is a transformer of the universal elemental energy into personal magnetism. And this is a very important practical point. Therefore, although it is customary to equate Malkuth with the Muladhara lotus, I have done this myself in previous writings. I have come, after practical experience of both methods, to doubt whether this is correct. It must be remembered, in equating the lotuses with the Sephiroth, that the yoga method is concerned with a single line of centers arranged one above the other, and the Kabbalistic method is concerned with three lines of centers related to each other in triangles. And we must consider the functions rather than the locations of the centers in equating them. Zero says the Sri Yantra is on the cover of the Goddess. That's pretty accurate with what I found about Lalita and the Sri Yantra. Well, believe it or not, the book that I showed, um, that set of mantras is directly connected with the, oh my gosh, I've got the Lalita Sahasranam. I know I said that wrong, but yeah, you're exactly right. They are connected. They are connected. Not one and the same, but they are attached to each other. Um, Let me check and see if I can do the thing that I'm thinking of doing. Check it out. I had to pull this one up off the altar. Universal Mother, Sri Lalita Sahasranama. Translation of Significance, Volume 1. Thankfully, this one has been available to me, and I will be studying it in conjunction with my Sri Yantra goddess Saundarya Lahiri texts. Yeah, man. Exactly. Lalita with the sugar cane bow. Right, right. Now, see, this is the one that I keep specifically on the altar, so I'm going to go ahead and put it right back. All right, back to it. All right, where were we? Where were we? Yeah, you saw it as the transformer of the universal elemental energy into personal magnetism. It's customary to equate Malkuth with the Muladhara lotus. Three lines of centers related to each other in triangles, and we must consider the functions rather than the locations of the centers in equating them. Yeah, yeah. Framestar says, I think there's room for debate as the tree can also be seen as a double 3D cube, so still forming a single pillar of magnetic flow, energetic flow. Malkuth occupies a position in the aura analogous to that of Kether. Malkuth occupies a position in the aura analogous to that of Kether. That is to say, it is outside the body and has no physical analog. And just as Kether picks up the cosmic forces, so Malkuth picks up the earth magnetism. So all these chapters that we've read, she's made a distinction between these elemental forces and these spiritual forces. Just as Kether picks up the cosmic forces, so Malkuth picks up the earth magnetism. Kether therefore equates accurately with the Sahasrara lotus. Kether therefore equates accurately with the Sahasrara lotus. But the function and the feel of Malkuth is quite different to that of the Muladhara. Moreover, the coloring is different. Malkuth has attributed to it the 4 colors of elemental earth, whereas Muladhara is wine colored. Yasod, on the other hand, has among its colors in the 4 color scales indigo, very dark purple, and violet purple, and the paths surrounding it have various shades of crimson, dark blue, and wine color among their symbolism. In my own experience, moreover, I have found what is said of the Muladhara lotus to equate with my own experience of Yasod, which for practical working purposes is unquestionably the reservoir of magnetic force so far as the individual is concerned. Traditionalists will not agree with this, but I was aware of the workings of Yasod before I had ever heard of yoga, and the results I obtained from this center exactly equate with what is reported of the Muladhara with its sleeping serpent. An ounce of experience is worth several pounds of tradition, and the citing of authorities who copy one another. An ounce of experience is worth several pounds of tradition, and the citing of authorities who copy one from another. And in taking my own experience in conjunction with the traditional coloring of Yasod and its converging paths, I think we have here a useful indication of the practical working. There are certain places on the tree where the paths connecting the pairs of opposites, the equilibrating Sephiroth on the side pillars, cut the middle pillar. These nodes are obviously important points. I believe we shall be on the right track if we equate certain of the chakras with these nodes and recognize in them the equilibrated forces of the pairs of opposites, of the different levels of manifestation. The Svadhisthana lotus, according to this system of notation, would correlate with the equilibrium of Had and Netzach. The Svadhisthana lotus, according to this system of notation, would correlate with the equilibrium of Netzach. So which one is the Svadhisthana lotus? Which one is the Svadhisthana lotus? So here's Had and here's Netzach, and she's saying that this is more accurately aligned with the sexual chakra. And that is in theme with how Malkuth and Yasod are often shown as one, just like the physical body and the pranic body overlap each other. Muladhara, Svadhisthana, Manipura. So what is that? What is this for practical use for you? Whatever you understand about the sexual center, the Svadhisthana, meditate on that alongside with what you know about Had and Netzach. What do you know about the sexual chakra? What do you know about that sacral chakra? What do you know about that Svadhisthana? What do you know about Svadhisthana? Take that and then line that up with what you know about Hod, and Netzach. For experimentation purposes, not as gospel, not as written in stone, but as an exercise of attempting to connect dots to make sense of abstract information. What is the symbol of Netzach? Do you know? What is the symbol of Hod? What's happening in those two spheres? Hmm. Now, I've talked many, many times about building your library of correspondences, and this is where this has to do. This is where this is important. I refuse to tell you what that means because your library of correspondences is unique to you, and mine is unique to me. So, whatever you've collected as far as information on these particular symbols, this is now where you put it together. And this is how the whole game works. A wide process of collecting meaning around symbols and then connecting those symbols to other symbols. And when you do that enough, the world starts to speak to you on its own. You don't force it. Like, by this point, you shouldn't have to be forcing anything. You shouldn't have to be, and I'm talking subjectively, you shouldn't have to be forcing a meaning. Oh, well, this must have meant something because, like, everything should be speaking to you at this point. Everything should be revealing itself to you at this point. If you thoroughly constructed your library of correspondences, what naturally arises is emergent narrative. The stories write themselves. The stories write themselves. When you've built your library of correspondences thoroughly, what happens is you are no longer seeking. You don't have to. There's no more questions. There's no more, I got to buy this book and I got to go look at the answers begin to reveal themselves to you because you've built a framework of reality out of symbols. And symbols aren't solid like meaning. Symbols are general meaning. Symbols are a collection of potentialities, not something like locked in and solid. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's triangle could be suggestive of fire, could be suggestive of activity. A triangle could be suggestive of masculinity of upwards or femininity of downwards. You see what I mean? It's so abstract and it can bend. It can be it's malleable, but not so malleable that it's meaningless. It at least points you in a direction. And if you have enough symbols that are pointing you in directions, when those symbols begin to talk to each other, the communication is now relative. It's now relative. And this why is this important? Because this is how you transition from the logical based materialistic point of view to the subjective based abstract point of view. This is the language that the subconscious mind speaks in. This is the language that the unconscious mind speaks. This is the language that artists speak in. This is the language that genius speaks in. You let the world tell you what it is. Now, here's the contradiction. At the same time, you control the context, you control the subjective narrative. When I was also reading the Sri Bhairava Tantra, I don't remember what page it's on, so I can't pull it up, but there was one section that was talking about how, in order to fully witness the ultimate reality, basically you have to let go of duality. Now, what it means is like when it was talking about purity. So if you think about purity, the problem is your mind immediately brings up impurity. So you think in order to be pure, I can't be impure. In order to be red, I can't be blue. In order to be hot, I can't be cold. Your mind immediately comes up with what's called counter thought. You automatically come up with the opposite contradiction, and that paralyzes you. That sterilizes the mind, or the consciousness, I should say. So what you want to do is learn how to let go of duality, learn how to release duality, and learn how to see existence without needing to resort to duality. Like you shouldn't have to look at one thing and think about the opposite just to make sense of it. You should be able to see something as it is. And when I say that you should be able to, I say that in terms of if your goal is to be as clear as possible in your perspective of reality, in alignment with what we're talking about in this book and the other book that I mentioned. Something doesn't have to be defined by its opposite. Anyways, we were over here somewhere, weren't we? Yeah, an ounce of experience is worth several pounds of tradition and the citing of authorities who copy one from another. Yeah, so the Swadhisthana lotus, according to this system of notation, would correlate with the equilibrium of Had and Netzach. Now, Had, Netzach, and Yesod are called the magical triangle. Had, equating with Thoth Hermes, is characterized by an intellectual, austere method of operation of the Hermetic type. Netzach, equating with Aphrodite and the Lady of Nature, is characterized by the Greek type of magic, such as is seen in the Dionysian rites. We went over that. And Yesod, equating with the moon, which, according to the most ancient tradition, is the magnetic aspect of the earth and is characteristically represented by the magical methods of Egypt. According to Madame Blavatsky's secret doctrine, the moon is the reservoir of magnetic force for the earth because evolution was at the etheric phase of development when moon and earth parted company. If this be true, and I attribute high authority to the secret doctrine, then it is to be presumed that what Kabbalists call the moon center in the microcosm will fulfill the same function. What are we talking about here? The etheric body. That is to say, Yesod will be the reservoir of magnetic force at the base of the spine, where the serpent Kundalini, which possibly equates to the Kabbalistic dragon, sleeps in her coils. It will be remembered by Kabbalists that it is in Yesod that is the place of severest judgments, to which Leviathan raises its 7 crowned heads, and allowing for the ascetic influence of Christian thought upon the doctrine of Western initiates. It is quite probable that the goddess Kundalini of the East is referred to as that old serpent. And here again, we have a useful piece of information. You know what thought has never entered my mind? Maybe it's useful and appropriate to let that serpent cross doth. Ooh, spooky business. Maybe it's useful and appropriate. I'm not gonna pull that picture out, but because it's buried under another stack of books. I'm gonna meditate on that. I do not believe that the magnetic circuits in the aura are normally closed circuits at all, but that the real secret of certain types of yoga lies in knowing how to pick up the different types of force at the different levels from sources outside of ourselves. At any rate, whatever the pupils of Eastern gurus may be taught to do, the Kabbalist is accustomed to pick up the earth currents through his Malkuth. The elemental energy which feeds the etheric double is picked up from the earth aura through the Malkuth center just as definitely as the food that feeds the physical body is taken in by the mouth. There is a widespread belief that it is picked up from the physical earth by the soles of the feet, and people refuse to wear rubber soles on their boots because they believe that to do so insulates them from the earth magnetism. I'm sure you guys have heard that before. I heard somebody preaching about how evil it was for somebody to invent high heels for women because it's raising women above the earth connection, and they're losing the connection with natural contact. Well, whatever, man. Everybody's got some crazy shit to say. There's a widespread belief that it is picked up from the physical earth by the soles of the feet, and people refuse to wear rubber soles on their boots because they believe to do so insulates them from the earth magnetism. Such beliefs are superstitions due to the error of confusing the planes. Aura picks up from aura. And because for practical purposes, the aura follows the conformation of the physical body, it is convenient to assume physical postures and make physical gestures because the body carries the aura with it. But it is not the physical form that is doing the work. It is not the physical form that is doing the work, which can be done quite independently of physical acts, which can be done quite independently of physical acts when the imagination is sufficiently trained to be able to visualize the aura without adventitious aids. The inhibiting effect of rubber soles is simply due to the fact that what we picture in the imagination, we build in the astral kingdom. And if we imagine a barrier to exist, that barrier comes into being. You already know that, though. You're already well aware of that. This is another important key to the practical workings. It may, of course, be said that such activities are pure auto suggestion. Man, maintain your frame. I control the context, right? You say that. You say I control the context. I control my context. You control your context. Can you imagine somebody telling you something and you just going with it and it causes you pain and suffering for the rest of your life? Fuck all that. I write my stories because I don't trust nobody else to write it for me. I ain't met a better author. I mean, Dion Fortune's pretty nice, but as far as the people who raised me, I control the context. This is another important key to the practical workings. It may of course be said that such activities are pure autosuggestion, but the initiate believes them to be something much more than that. He believes that the subtle levels of the human makeup can enter into relationship with the corresponding levels of objective existence and so extend the range of our experience and function beyond the physical body. Initiates, though, under no delusions concerning the part played by physical agencies in such matters, nevertheless make use of the physical forms of the elemental energies when seeking to contact the earth magnetism. Such an act is ritualistic rather than of the nature of a physical exercise. It is the mental effect of the physical action that counts. It is the mental effect of the physical action that counts, not the action as such. It is one thing to fall to our knees over a fold in the carpet, and another to fall on our knees in ecstasy before a high altar. Listen to me. I control the context. You say that and you think about what that means. It is one thing to fall to our knees over a fold in a carpet, and another to fall to our knees in ecstasy before a high altar. If you ain't hearing what I'm saying, you heard when Bobby Hemmett said, I got healed by peach soda. It's the same exact shit that's going on right now. You define the story of what's happening. Even if you allow somebody else to tell you, you allowed that. It doesn't matter what's happening on the physical plane. What matters is the story that you are using to interpret it. Meditate on that for just a minute. Mothra, peace and greetings. Super 711 Zone, peace, peace. Well, let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up here. Because I don't know if you considered the fact that you control the concept, the context, but I hope you did. I hope you considered that. Because that's the philosopher's stone right there. If you're looking for the philosopher's stone, that's it. I control the context. Nothing is true, everything is permitted. There ain't much that you're gonna take with you when you die, but that's gonna be one of them. That's one of them. But you tell me something else that you're gonna take with you when you die. Let's continue. Tree Marie, peace, peace. Missed you last night. Hope to see you next time. Hope you're having a good evening. Super late for you, golly. Well, maybe super early. I don't know your schedule. Chicano says, it's not, oh, I'm looking funny doing this. It's we're supposed to look funny. We make the meaning, even if we are the disruption in others' eyes. Exactly. Like it. And here's another thing, man. Here's another thing. When you commit to controlling the context, you start to shape how other people see you. Like interpretation for most people, it's back and forth, right? If you do something that's weird, most people don't know how to take it. And at first they're gonna be like, what the fuck is that? And it's awkward. And if you play along based on that and you feed into their story, then yes, it's going to remain that way and get deeper like that. But if you have a certain sense of confidence, like I'm literally doing this on purpose, this is what it's supposed to look like. You don't understand it. And that's fine. You're not supposed to. That'll start to affect how that person is responding. Like controlling the context, it's not simply just about believing what you want to believe. It has a very real effect on the outside world. And honestly, man, if you really look at like the dynamic, social dynamics and NLP and stuff, the one who has the strongest frame wins. The one who has the strongest frame wins, because everybody's not going to maintain their frame um, to the end. Some people maintain it just long enough to be comfortable. But the one who maintains their frame to the end is the one who shapes the current, shapes the trajectory. I'm telling you, this philosopher's stone is knowing that you control the context and holding on to that. Just make the fucking decision and keep it. Just make the decision and keep it. And I've gone ahead and decided everything I do is correct. Everything I do is correct. I always win. Even if it looks like losing, I've won. Etc. ad nauseum. We're in the final stretch of tonight's book study. It is one thing to fall to our knees over a fold in the carpet, and another to fall on our knees in ecstasy before a high altar. Nevertheless, because places tune mood, it is well worthwhile when seeking the elemental contacts to seek them where the elements are present in their strength. By so doing, we not only aid ourselves in the establishment of contacts, but may enjoy experiences of great interest and value. But although the beginner needs all the help that physical conditions can give him, the experienced worker ought to be independent of them. It's the very amateur and precious author who has to have something special in the way of a desk or an ink pot to enable him to function. All the experienced writer requires is pen and paper and a quiet corner, right? So what category are you in? Do you need to have the music? Do you have to have the crystal? You have to have the incense or the essential oils. You have to have your outfit. You know, you can't have any noise in the background, no babies crying, no people talking. It has to be perfect. You have to have everything set up, and then you can be spiritual, right? Is that the level you're working at? Or can you just drop in at any time? Can you drop in the middle of the grocery store, at the DMV, at work, on the clock? But although the beginner needs all the help that physical conditions can give him, the experienced worker ought to be independent of them. It is the very amateur and precious author who has to have something special in the way of a desk or an ink pot to enable him to function. All the experienced writer requires is pen and paper and a quiet corner. It is my experience that we ought to be very careful to balance the subjective and objective in our occult work. We ought to be very careful to balance the subjective and objective in our occult work and not allow ourselves to become exclusively habituated to either in our methods of working. If we do, we produce a one sided development and may make of ourselves dissociated introverts, cut off from the world of form just as effectually and limitingly as the worldly man is cut off from spiritual things. In this matter, we shall be unwise to allow the advice and example of the saints of the West and the yogis of the East to influence us unduly. For many things pass for spiritual that are really pathological. We can read that again 20 times. For many things pass for spiritual that are really pathological and psychological and sociological. And I shall always maintain that there is little profit in saving the soul at the expense of the mental balance. It is this difference in viewpoint and divergence in aim between East and West, which forces us to approach the practice of yoga by the traditional methods with great caution. For this reason, I prefer to apply the theory of yoga to the practice of the Kabbalistic methods rather than pursue wholeheartedly an imperfectly understood and alien method. And so concludes tonight's study. What did you get from this? What's a takeaway that you got? What's something that you're going to think about? What's something that you're going to pursue in your study for the rest of the week? What is something that stuck out to you that you're going to hold on to and think about for a little bit longer? Tree Marie says that I need to watch the replay. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Tree Marie, I don't know if you got the notification, but I would highly suggest that you watch the live stream meeting from last night. There are some activations there, I'll say. I think I might share some of it on YouTube as well. Coach Magic X says I need to practice getting real work in wherever I'm at. Absolutely. Absolutely. And not only that, Coach Magic X, also acknowledge where you are putting in real work. Because that's another thing that I see with all of us. We often overlook the work that we are doing to make ourselves feel like we're not doing enough. Oh man says I have to start from the beginning. No better place to start from. No better place. Zero says I have a few, but that I control the context part hits so hard. Thank you, Trav, as always. Thank you, as always. But yeah, that's one that I would certainly encourage you to think on. Right? I control the context. I mean, I can't be the only one. When you just look back at life, man, so many other people's words have shaped our reality. So many other people's opinions and stupid ass thoughts have shaped our lives. I can't be the only one. Like, you ever have like a moment where you kind of just cringe about something that you did in the past? Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, that was so stupid. But if you really dissect those moments, you're thinking about it from the perspective of somebody else. Nothing that you do should be embarrassing, especially if everything that what you've done has been a true expression of who you are. You shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed. You're expressing who you are. So to feel bad about expressing who you are means that somebody else's opinion is overshadowing your own, and that simply will not do. Reframe it. Chicano says, I got why the 30-second path is important. Hmm. And why it's the most terrifying, huh? Framestar Film says correlation between East and Western traditions and practice. Halfway through the live from last night. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Glad you are getting, you know, goodness out of it. I felt it, man. Something was there. And And I can see that we are collectively heading towards something that we have been in before in a very, very good way. All right. Listen, everybody, I truly appreciate your time, your energy, your focus, your dedication to your practice, right? Your practice has nothing to do with me, but, you know, I'm very, very happy to be in alignment with others who are serious about the work. In my physical reality, nobody gives a shit about any of this. So it's really nice to be in communication with others who are like minded and take this work seriously. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your focus. I appreciate your time that you spent here with me and this book and all the books that we've done. May we keep doing it as long as we want to. This is the tarot card that I've been meditating on for the past few weeks. This is probably my favorite tarot card, Temperance. What tarot card have you been meditating on? Alchemic energy, peace and greetings. Peace and greetings. Hope you're doing well. Zero says, thank you, Trav. Really is a blessing being here, always learning from you. It's good to be here, Zero. Doing this. I mean, otherwise, I'd be dead. So I suppose it's a blessing. All right. Well, gonna go hang out with my son and cook some more spicy food. Maybe watch a movie. Get some sleeps. And we'll see you next time. Next Saturday, we will continue with the Earth and Moon centers. All right. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you all. Peace. Really, I love you. Take care of yourselves. Be good to yourselves. Find an excuse to be happy. Find an excuse to focus on the good in your lives. Because your mind is powerful. Your consciousness is the power. And you train the elemental forces in your environment. It is crucial that you feel good and you remain optimistic. Not just because it's the nice thing to do, but you vibrate outwardly and your elemental environment absorbs those vibrations and produces what you've given it. So you impregnate your world with your feelings and your repetitive thoughts. If you've got repetitive thoughts that you don't want to manifest, stop thinking about them. It's easy, real easy. All right. See you next time.